Modern diets get a lot of hate, and rightfully so. We constantly hear that processed food is ruining our health, sugar is addictive, fast food is killing us, and our grandparents ate way better than us. But then, if we're eating such crap, how come we're living longer than ever before? That's what I want to talk about in this video. As you will see, the answer is much more complicated than just food got worse and medicine got better. I will break down why exactly life expectancy has gone up over time, how our diets have changed, and why a longer life doesn't necessarily mean a healthier one. Let's get into it. Okay, so if we go back just a few hundred years, life was pretty rough. People didn't die because they ate too many donuts or drank too much soda. They died from things that we usually don't worry about anymore: poor hygiene, childbirth complications, and infectious diseases. Or if you go back even further to our Stone Age ancestors, it will be things like wild animals or something simple as a cut that got infected. Let's take child mortality as an example. In many parts of the world, just 150 years ago, a huge portion of children didn't make it past age 5. This dragged down the average life expectancy for everyone. So when we say someone in 1800 had a life expectancy of 35 or 40 years, it doesn't mean everyone dropped dead at that age. It just means a lot of people died very young, and it brought the average down. Of course, even if you did make it past childhood, survival wasn't easy. You could die from contaminated water, a bad harvest, war, or a bacterial infection, and there was really no treatment for it. Nutrition wasn't really the top concern, just staying alive was. Also remember that the first big leaps in life expectancy had very little to do with what people ate. Instead, it was things like plumbing and sanitation, since clean water made a huge difference. Once people stopped drinking water contaminated with waste, then rates of cholera and other deadly diseases plummeted. Antibiotics also played a role, because they allowed us to fight many once deadly infections. And safer childbirths themselves also did because of advances in hygiene and hospital care. All of these improvements came before we got obsessed with nutrition. So when we talk about living longer, it's important to recognize that diet definitely wasn't the main driver early on. Another thing to keep in mind is that food used to be about survival and not health. Back in the day, most nutrition was simple. Not in the trendy, simple whole food kind of way, but in the we hope to have enough to eat this winter kind of way. For most of human history, a lack of calories was the #1 diet concern. People actually starved, and famines were very common. A bad harvest could wipe out entire communities. That changed a little with the Industrial Revolution, because suddenly food could be grown, processed, transported, and stored on a much larger scale. And then it changed a lot with the Green Revolution in the mid-20th century, which massively increased food production around the world, using new fertilizers and machinery. The result was that for many people, calorie shortages started to fade away. In fact, for the first time in human history, we had the opposite problem: too many calories, often from foods that were cheap and easy to produce. So nowadays, we're not dying of starvation anymore, at least not in most developed countries. We have food around us 24/7. Supermarkets, drive-thrus, convenience stores. Calories are everywhere. And not just calories, but hyper-palatable ones. Salty, sweet, fatty, and they're all designed to hit our cravings. Of course, we all know that a lot of these calories come without much else. They're empty calories. That means they provide energy, but little to no nutritional value. Very few vitamins, no minerals, antioxidants, or fiber. Think soda, white bread, chips, candy, and ultra-processed meals. You can eat 2,000 calories a day and still be malnourished if those calories don't come with the nutrients that your body needs to function. So what we've done is go from not enough food to plenty of food, but of questionable quality. With this change came a shift towards degenerative diseases. So even though infectious diseases aren't gone, they're no longer the top killers. These days, chronic degenerative diseases are what shorten most people's lives. Things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, stroke, or Alzheimer's. Most of these aren't random. They are heavily influenced by your diet and lifestyle. Sedentary behavior, smoking, lack of exercise, poor sleep, stress, and of course a diet full of processed empty calories all contribute. So even though we're living longer than ever, we're not necessarily living better. Many people spend their final 10 or 20 years dealing with chronic illness, worse mobility, and on expensive medication. In a sense, health span has become more important than lifespan. So how long you live in good health and not just how long you live overall. And for many people, their health span is often much shorter than their lifespan. Thanks to modern medicine, we can treat or manage a lot of diseases that used to kill us. But that doesn't mean people feel good or function well into old age. And diet plays a huge role in this. So to go back to the original question, if modern diets are so bad, why do we live longer than ever? The answer is that we fixed all the things that used to kill us quickly, like infections and injuries, but now we're dealing with slow killers like heart disease and metabolic syndrome. Modern diets are a big part of that, and the irony is that we have more food than ever, but we're also more nutritionally depleted than ever. Bad nutrient testing is one of the reasons why this last statement is still somewhat controversial. But keep in mind that we spend billions on healthcare, yet most chronic diseases are preventable or at least better manageable through diet and lifestyle. In the holistic health space, it's often seen as one or the other. Either you're completely reliant on modern medicine and follow a horrible diet, or you follow a healthy diet but have to completely refuse medical innovations. I believe we can have the best of both worlds, and there is middle ground here. But of course, that's just my 2 cents, so feel free to agree or disagree. I would love to hear your take on this.